They never tore it down. You'd think, after everything that happened, after what they found beneath the floorboards and the smell that lingered even when no one had lived there for years, you'd think they would have leveled it. Burned it. Replaced it with a parking lot or a park or one of those boxy condos with black windows and no soul. But they didn't. They just let it sit there, behind the iron gate that always seemed too tall, too cold, too deliberate for a regular house. House number 24. The only one on the cul-de-sac with no welcome mat, no kids' bikes tossed on the lawn, no life behind the windows. Just shutters. Always closed. Always silent. When I was 12, I stood outside that house and swore I saw someone in the upstairs window. A girl, pale, still, like a photograph. But when I pointed her out to my brother, she was gone. He laughed and said I needed to stop watching horror movies. That was his answer to everything. But I knew what I saw. That image stayed with me for years, the stillness of her face, the way her hair floated slightly, like she was underwater. Her eyes were wide open, but there was no light in them. They looked like holes in her head. It was only when I turned 32 and moved back to town, when the house came up in conversation like a ghost rising from the deep, that I remembered her in full. The girl. The window. And I realized I had never really stopped thinking about her. Not completely. The truth is, no one really knew who built house number 24. The older folks in town would just shrug and say, it's always been there. But records showed it appeared sometime in the late 1800s. Not built, appeared. That's the word that kept showing up, like it had dropped out of the fog one morning. There were no blueprints. No sale history prior to 1902. Just an old entry in a registry book that read, house placed. Occupied. No one ever seemed to live there very long. A man named Thorne lived there in 1904, a surveyor from the capital. He vanished one winter, left his boots by the door and food on the table, like he meant to come right back. The authorities searched the house. They found claw marks inside the walls, behind the wallpaper. Marks that didn't match human hands. Or any animal known to live in this region. After that, families came and went. Never more than 2 years. The reasons were always vague. Illness. Financial strain. One woman simply walked out of the house one afternoon and never spoke again. Just stared, open-mouthed, for the rest of her life, like she saw something she couldn't unsee. But this isn't about them. It's about me. And the girl in the window. And what I found beneath the floor of the nursery. I didn't buy the house. That would have been madness. But I was drawn to it in a way that made me feel sick, almost. Like something was pulling behind my navel, like a rope around my spine, dragging me toward that dead-end street. I told myself I was just curious. Just passing by. But then I saw the for rent sign. It was crooked, hanging by one nail, swaying slightly though there was no wind. No contact number. Just the word available. And before I even knew what I was doing, I had called the number from the registry listing. The agent was startled. Said the house had been taken off the market for years. But after a long pause, he said, if you want it, it's yours. Just, don't ask too many questions. I didn't. I should have. But I didn't. I moved in on a rainy Thursday, bringing only a suitcase, a kettle, and my journals. I didn't tell anyone, not even my brother, where I was staying. I didn't want the judgment. I told myself it was just temporary. A writing retreat. A kind of self-imposed exile to clear my head. The moment I stepped inside, I felt it. The air was too still. Thick. Like the house was holding its breath. Every floorboard moaned under my feet, but the sound didn't echo, it got swallowed, like the house was absorbing it. The walls were covered in a floral pattern that had faded to the color of bone. There was a layer of dust on everything, but it wasn't just neglect, it was like the house was growing it, like mold. I wiped the windows clean, and by morning, they were fogged over again. From the inside. The upstairs was worse. There was a long hallway with 4 doors. One was locked, wouldn't budge, not even when I threw my weight against it. I assumed it was a closet. The second was a bathroom, its mirror cracked like something had struck it from within. The third was what I took as the master bedroom, though it felt cold, too large, like something was missing. And then the 4th door. The nursery. I don't know why I called it that. There was no crib. No toys. Just a rocking chair, gently swaying when I entered, though the air was dead still. The wallpaper in that room was peeling, revealing strange patterns underneath, circles, etched into the plaster like someone had drawn them with a knife. Symbols. I didn't recognize them. And on the far wall, above where a crib might have once stood, were 4 words carved directly into the wood. She does not sleep. That night, I dreamed of the girl. Not like before, not distant, not still. She was in the room with me. Her hair was longer than I remembered, almost black now, and her skin was the color of wet ashes. She was sitting in the rocking chair, her knees pulled to her chest. And her eyes, they were open, wide and unblinking. They didn't move. But I felt them in my skull. I woke up with my hands bleeding. Scratches all over my palms. Like I'd been clawing at something in my sleep. The chair was still rocking. I told myself it was sleep paralysis. That I'd injured myself stumbling in the night. But my knuckles were raw. My nails were split. And there was dust under them that smelled like iron. The second night, I heard singing. Soft, high-pitched, like a child humming to herself. It came from the nursery. I sat up in bed, heart pounding, and listened. It wasn't a melody I recognized. Just 5 notes. Repeated. Over and over. They didn't seem to resolve. Just looped endlessly, like a broken lullaby. I didn't sleep after that. I started pacing the halls, leaving lights on, then returning to find them off. Doors that had been shut were open. The locked one at the end of the hall had scratches near the knob. Deep ones. I tried to ignore them. Told myself the house was old. Old houses shift and settle. But it wasn't settling. It was waking. The whispers started on the 4th night. Not words, not at first. Just a sound like wind under a door. But there was no wind. The air was completely still. When I pressed my ear to the floor, I could hear it more clearly, a kind of muttering. Almost rhythmic. Like something was speaking in a language I didn't know. That's when I remembered the symbols. I went back to the nursery with a flashlight and peeled away the wallpaper. More circles. More runes. They covered the entire wall, looping from corner to corner, spiraling inward to one place, the floor beneath the rocking chair. I moved it aside. The floorboard there was loose. Not visibly, no cracks, no warping. But when I tapped it, it rang hollow. I wedged a screwdriver beneath the edge and pried it up. There was something buried underneath. Wrapped in burlap, soaked in something dark. The smell hit me first, sharp, metallic, rotting. I staggered back, covering my mouth. It wasn't just decay, it was old. Ancient. Like the scent of something that had been dead for far too long. I unwrapped it slowly. It was a doll. But not like any doll I'd ever seen. Its face was smooth, blank, no eyes, no mouth. Just skin. The limbs were jointed, but wrong, bent too many ways. The fabric was stitched with the same symbols I'd seen on the wall. And inside the chest, sewn with thick black thread, was a small, red stone. I touched it. And I heard her voice. Not out loud. In my head. She whispered a name I didn't recognize. Then again. louder. Until it was all I could hear. The same name, over and over, echoing inside me like a scream underwater. I dropped the doll. Tried to put the floorboard back. But my hands wouldn't stop shaking. I shoved the chair back into place and left the room. The next morning, the door to the nursery was gone. Not closed. Gone. There was just wallpaper, smooth, as if it had never existed. I ran my hands over it. Scraped at it with my nails. Nothing. Just plaster. Paint. And silence. But that night, I heard the rocking. And the humming. And the whispers saying my name. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed, the sheets pulled tight to my chest like they might shield me from what I knew was moving just beyond the thin walls of this house. Every creak, every shift in the wood, every sigh of old beams felt deliberate. Like the house was aware of me now. Watching. Listening. Breathing with me. At some point, I must have slipped into a half-sleep, because I remember waking, or dreaming I was waking, to the sound of footsteps just outside my bedroom. Slow. Bare feet against wood. They paused at the door. I didn't move. I couldn't. My eyes were open, but my body had locked. It was like something in the air was holding me down. Then came the sound. That humming. 5 notes. Soft, lilting. Coming from inside the room now. The closet door creaked open. I didn't remember leaving it ajar. I stared into the darkness within, heart beating so hard I thought it would burst out of my throat. And then I saw her. Not clearly, just the outline. A silhouette, crouched low, limbs too long, head tilted too far to one side. Her hair hung in wet strands over her face, and she didn't move. Not at first. She just crouched there, watching me with eyes I couldn't see but felt, as if they were burrowing into my skull. Then she whispered. The same name I had heard before. And I swear to God, I felt it in my bones, like her voice was inside me, clawing at the marrow. I screamed. Or thought I did. My voice didn't come out. Just a gasp. A shallow, rattling breath that died in my throat. When I blinked, she was gone. But the closet door remained open. And inside, carved into the back wall, was the same message from the nursery. She does not sleep. The next morning, I tried to leave. I packed what little I had, grabbed the keys, and marched to the front door. But it was jammed. I turned the handle, nothing. Deadbolt slid back and forth easily, but the door wouldn't budge. Like the wood had swollen shut. Or like something was holding it from the other side. The windows wouldn't open either. I even tried breaking one with a chair, the glass didn't shatter. Just bounced the chair back, like the pane was made of something thicker, heavier. I cut my hand trying to force it. Thick, black blood dripped down my wrist. It didn't look like mine. It smelled wrong. I sat on the floor for what felt like hours. Listening. The humming started again around noon. This time from below. There was a basement. I hadn't noticed it before, the door was hidden behind a cabinet in the kitchen, as if someone had deliberately sealed it off. But the sound came up through the floorboards, unmistakable. That same 5-note lullaby, rising through the foundation like a voice from the dirt. I should have stayed away. But you don't understand, the sound, it wasn't just eerie. It was magnetic. It pulled at something in me. Like I'd heard it before, in another life, another body. Like it belonged to me. I moved the cabinet. Behind it, the door was nailed shut. Not locked, nailed. As though someone had tried to bury whatever was down there. I pried the boards free with the claw end of the hammer I found in the pantry. Each nail screamed as it came loose. The wood beneath the door was blackened. Burnt. I opened it. The stairs were steep, uneven. Carved stone instead of wood. They descended farther than they should have. The house wasn't that tall. The air was wet. Heavy. The kind of cold that clings to your teeth and soaks your clothes through. At the bottom was a corridor. It shouldn't have been there. It was too long, too narrow. The walls were dirt, but smooth, like they'd been polished. Carved symbols lined the tunnel, etched with some kind of black chalk. Some glowed faintly, like they were alive. I kept walking, the humming growing louder with every step. And then, the door. Massive. Iron. Set into the earth like a vault. It bore no handle, no lock. Just an indentation, a perfect circle, the same size as the red stone I had seen inside the doll. I should have run. But I didn't. I went back upstairs. To the nursery. The door had returned, but the room was different now. The walls were bare. The symbols were gone. The floor was smooth, clean. The rocking chair stood still. And the doll was in it. Waiting. I approached slowly. My hands shook as I reached for the stone in its chest. It came loose with a soft pop, like it wanted to be removed. The moment it left the doll's body, the air around me changed. It grew thicker. Heavier. My ears rang. I thought I heard someone sobbing, deep, heaving sobs, not from the house, but from inside me. Like the sound was echoing from my lungs. I went back to the basement. Back to the door. When I pressed the stone into the circle, it fit perfectly. The wall shuddered. The symbols along the corridor lit up, one by one, pulsing with a deep red light. The door groaned open, stone grinding against stone. A breath of air spilled out, old, warm, and thick with the stench of rot and fire. Inside was a room. Round. Small. And in the center, a bed. A child's bed. And on it, the girl. She was curled on her side, eyes open, mouth slightly parted. Her skin was gray. Cracked in places, like clay left to dry. Her hair floated around her, weightless, as though she were submerged in something that wasn't water. She didn't blink. Didn't move. The humming had stopped. She just stared. And then, she smiled. Not a sweet smile. Not one that spoke of peace or rest. But a stretched, broken smile, like her face had forgotten how to make the expression and was trying to remember. Her lips split at the corners. Blood, or something thicker, oozed from the cracks. She spoke my name. Perfectly. Like she'd been waiting to say it her entire life. Come closer. Her voice wasn't a child's. It was too deep. Too layered. Like 100 voices stacked on top of each other. Some male. Some female. Some not human at all. I took a step forward. She reached out a hand. It was small, fragile, the fingers bent backwards at unnatural angles. The nails were black. Long. Each one etched with tiny versions of the symbols I'd seen on the wall. They shimmered when the light hit them. I took another step. Come, she said again. And I did. I reached out. Not because I wanted to. But because I had to. Because some part of me had already done it, years ago, when I saw her in that window and thought, just for a moment, that she looked like me. Our hands touched. And the room vanished. I was in the hallway again. The one upstairs. But the lights were gone. The wallpaper had rotted. The walls bled. Thick streams of dark liquid dripped from the ceiling, and the wood beneath my feet pulsed, like it had veins. Like it was alive. The nursery door opened on its own. Inside, the bed from the underground chamber was now in the center of the room. And she was sitting on it. Still smiling. Only now she looked like me. Exactly like me. Hair. Eyes. Scars. She cocked her head and said, "You took too long." And then the walls screamed. Not creaked. Screamed. A high, keening sound like metal being torn apart and bones grinding into dust. The floor buckled. The windows shattered inward. The closet door burst open, and dozens of dolls tumbled out, each one stitched with those same cruel runes. She stood. And I fell. Down. Into the house. Not the one you see from the outside. The one beneath it. Where the walls are made of breath, and the floors are soaked in memory, and time folds in on itself like paper. Where the girl lives. Where she has always lived. Where she does not sleep.